Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. You know, 2017 has been a pretty remarkable year when it comes to the sheer quantity of new albums from some of rock's all-time biggest names. This year alone has brought us albums from Bob Dylan, Roger Waters, Ringo Starr, kinda sorta Neil Young, and at the end of 2016 we even got a new Rolling Stones album, and we've had new live albums from David Gilmour and The Who as well. Today, I'll be taking a look at the latest album from another rock legend, Robert Plant. I was a pretty big fan of his last solo album, so I was really looking forward to Carry Fire. Does it live up to my expectations? We'll dig into the album in just a second, but first, be sure to stick around until the end of the review for my latest 30-second throwback. You know, Robert Plant is one of a long list of music stars to have had an album produced by the legendary T-Bone Burnett. Although the album Raising Sand is considered a sort of duet album for Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, T-Bone Burnett played just as big a role in making that a great record. Burnett is a Grammy and Oscar-winning producer, but my favorite T-Bone Burnett produced album was actually by his wife. Find out who she is in this edition of 30-Second Throwback coming up later in this episode. Coming of age in the 80s, Led Zeppelin wasn't a band that really appeared on my radar in my teenage years. Everybody knew Stairway to Heaven, of course, but to many of us 80s kids, Robert Plant was the guy who sang Sea of Love with the Honey Drippers. Even though he had a few solo singles on the radio during that decade, that was the prime of MTV, and Robert Plant was no Michael Jackson. It wasn't until his 1988 album Now and Zen that Plant started making music that really felt like it belonged on the same stations that were playing the biggest music video hits. Now, I'm not saying that singles like Heaven Knows or Tall Cool One were on the same level as anything that Led Zeppelin ever released, just that they were songs that felt very much of their time. And that's probably why they both went to #1 on the charts in the US. For me, it wasn't until the 90s that I really dug into the music of Led Zeppelin to discover what I'd been missing. And after picking up a couple of their CDs, I knew it was time for me to make a true investment into their music. This box set was the crown jewel of my modest music collection circa 1995. And even though I've added the remastered editions of their albums to my library over the past few years, I'm still proud to have this elegant brick on my shelf. This is music so good that it's worth buying twice. But let's fast forward in the solo career of Robert Plant. At this point, now 11 post-Zeppelin albums in, Plant is well past the Now and Zen days of trying to make music that fits into any contemporary music scene. Now he's making music that, for the most part, doesn't sound like anything else out there. In fact, I'd say he's had a sort of musical renaissance over the past 10 years, starting with the amazing Raising Sand album with Alison Krauss. Even though that album was virtually all covers, I think it breathed new life into Plant as an artist, and you can hear that influence in all the music he's recorded since. On Band of Joy, Plant sounded more vital than he had in years, and on Lullaby and the Ceaseless Roar, he created a sound that was perhaps more timeless than anything he's recorded before. His new band was billed as the sensational Space Shifters, but to be fair, he'd been working with half of the musicians in that group on albums dating back to Dreamland in 2002. His 2017 album is Carry Fire, which finds him once again backed by the sensational Space Shifters. For the most part, Carry Fire picks up where the Ceaseless Roar left off. If you've heard that album, if you liked that album, you won't find any big surprises here. Generally speaking, I'd say that's a good thing. This mode that Plant finds himself in at the age of 69 really works, perhaps better than the modern versions of themselves that some other legendary classic rock singers have become. The Robert Plant on Carry Fire does not sound like he's in any way still trying to recreate the music of his past. Compared to, say, the recent Roger Waters solo album, I find that rather refreshing. And I get that feeling right away on track 1, The May Queen. As soon as I hear that jangly guitar over that deep mix of bass and synth paired with perfectly sparse percussion, I get excited. Again, we've heard this sound on the previous album, and I think this opening track lets us know we're in for somewhat of a sequel. Of course, any good sequel needs new characters, and we're introduced to the violin on this song, adding a little bit of a bluegrass flavor to the proceedings. It's a nice touch, and we'll be hearing it again on a couple other tracks. When we get to tracks 2 and 3, we start to see the beginnings of some of the weaknesses on this album, which is that some of these songs feel sort of half-baked. There's some interesting things going on here musically, but in neither case do they seem to really go anywhere. I like the U2-ish vibe of the New World, but it doesn't ever step up and define itself in any memorable way. Season's song is a little bit better, but again, it feels like the band was jamming on a theme but never figured out what else to do with it. Things start to click on Dance With You Tonight, though. Again, there's an unmistakable U2 vibe, but the band gives the music a more exotic feel behind Plant's mellow vocals, until finally, as the song winds down, he starts to wake up, so to speak, and we hear hints of the Robert Plant of old. He's probably not capable of the kind of vocal gymnastics of his Zeppelin days, not to mention his earlier solo work. Still, he teases us with a minor wail, which stands out here since we haven't heard that level of energy in the previous 3 songs. Track 5 is Carving Up the World Again, a wall, not a fence, and it kicks off with this propulsive beat that sustains through the entire song, giving the rhythmic vocals a sort of anchor. There's a strong Tom Waits vibe on this song. It feels similar to Clap Hands from his classic Rain Dogs album. If you didn't notice it before, you won't be able to avoid it now. I like the sound a lot, actually, but part of that is that this album is a bit starved for mid to up-tempo songs, so this one stands out, at least in that regard. Case in point, the next track, Away With Words, slows things way down again. This song is very moody, actually reminiscent of some of the quieter songs on Coldplay's Ghost Stories album. We've got a solitary piano paired with swelling synth strings that create a lush soundscape together. It doesn't really go anywhere interesting, though, and Plant's vocal is nearly a whisper throughout. It's not a bad track per se, but just kinda, The title track comes up next, and it picks things up with an international flavor. Carry Fire again gets the balance right. I'm not sure if it's an actual sitar we're hearing on this track, but it definitely defines the sound of the song. The percussion is rich and full, and the background strings accent the exotic feel of the track. As the song nears its conclusion, we get the subtle addition of pulsing synths and drum machines as the violin joins in to trade licks with the sitar. Definitely one of the highlights of the album. Bones of Saints is the most up-tempo track on the album, and yet Plant still feels so restrained. There's also a bit of a dated feel to the song that makes it kind of feel like Sting in the 90s, actually. It also feels incomplete. Once again, it's like the band was jamming on this theme but couldn't figure out where, if anywhere, it wanted to go. In the end, it kind of goes nowhere and just fades out. Keep It Hid brings back the deep driving bass like we heard on the opening track, along with this great jazzy shuffle on the drums. There's some nice guitar work on this track too, not in your face at all, but little accents in the perfect places. It's a super cool track, even if, like several other songs on this album, it ends up sort of petering out in the end. The penultimate track is a cover song that, with more restrained instrumentation, could have fit with the mix of songs on Raising Sand. In fact, Bluebirds Over the Mountain is also a duet. Instead of Alison Krauss, we get Chrissie Hynde of the Pretenders. Their voices blend well together, and maybe Hynde's presence even inspires Plant. We finally get some of his trademark wailing on this song. It's something that's long overdue at this point in the music, and it helps to elevate this song to being one of the album's highlights. Finally, we have Heaven Sent, which is yet another down-tempo, moody number. There's been a few on this album that don't seem to do much but set a somber tone. This song seems to get the balance right, though. The vocals are restrained, but the harmonies are lush. The instrumentation is haunting, and the chords are foreboding. I love the way the guitar distortion fills in the background while everything else is awash in reverb and gives the song a dreamlike feeling. This wouldn't have been my choice to end the album, but it's still one of the stronger tracks. So as I said before, Carry Fire very much feels like a continuation from Robert Plant's last album, which seems like a good move for him considering how well that sound worked out for him before. But the problem on the new album isn't really the sound or the vibe, it's just that there don't seem to be as many strong or complete ideas this time around. I think the album is a solid effort, well played and well produced, but as I said before, there's too many songs that just feel half-baked. I mean, even the cover of the album seems oddly unimaginative. As much as I really do like the sound of this current incarnation of Robert Plant, maybe after this record it would be a good time for him to move on to the next phase. That being said, I'd also be happy to see him return with a sensational third album with the Space Shifters, and prove me wrong. But I'm giving Carry Fire by Robert Plant an X rating of 6. It's a fine companion album to Lullaby and the Ceaseless Roar, but this fire doesn't burn quite as bright. Okay, now it's time for a 30-second throwback. Earlier in the video, I mentioned Raising Sand, the Robert Plant and Alison Krauss Grammy-winning album of the year that was produced by T-Bone Burnett. Now, Burnett has worked with a long list of noteworthy artists, including Elvis Costello, Roy Orbison, Elton John, Willie Nelson, John Mellencamp, and even Spinal Tap. But there's one album he produced by a lesser-known artist that would probably be one of my Desert Island discs, and that's Martinis and Bikinis by Sam Phillips. Burnett and Phillips were actually married for about 15 years, including 1994 when this incredible album was released, and it's the subject of this 30-second throwback. Beatlesque is a phrase you hear used to describe music from time to time, but rarely for female artists. With Sam Phillips and the album Martinis and Bikinis, I can think of no better phrase. What's more, this album is one of the best blatantly Beatles-influenced records I've heard by any artist. From the short opening prelude of Love and Kisses on to great songs like Signposts, When I Fall, and I Need Love, the influences are clear and they've rarely sounded fresher. Closing the album with John Lennon's Give Me Some Truth gives the lost Beatle a respectful nod. This album is highly recommended. Alright, we've talked about a lot of great music today, and if you're looking to add any of it to your collection, I've got links in the description below. Sam Phillips, Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, all great stuff. Once again, my name's Kyle, and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. If you like what you see, please be sure to click the old thumbs up icon, plus check out some of these other videos on my channel. And of course, be sure to click subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.